Hi, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to present the first session, which is global health through a customized approaches, because for me, it's the opportunity, not only for me, but maybe for you, to discover new processes and also problematic about not only that medicine will be not only accessible, but also personalized. We have among us high-rank speakers, so without wasting more time, please welcome LEROY Hood on stage. Please, thank you. Hi, LEROY. You can hear me, huh? LEROY Hood, you are the president of the institution, the Institute of System Biology.
I am.
You are. You are a pioneer in genetic sequencing, and now you are interested in what you call P4 medicine. Can you explain us, not only to me, but also to the audience, what is the essence of P4 medicine, please?
So let me give you a personal story of how I came to personalized medicine, or P4 medicine. As a young assistant professor at Caltech, I was astounded with the incredible complexity of biology and disease, and realized that studying things one gene or one protein at a time wasn't going to work. And indeed, what we really needed was a conceptual framework for dealing with complexity that later became systems biology. And we needed to develop the technologies and the strategies for bringing information to deal with complexity. And I had the good fortune to be involved in all of those endeavors. We, over the years, invented a series of 6 instruments that allowed you to read and write DNA, and these enabled high-throughput biology and big data. One of the instruments, the automated sequencer, got me invited to the first meeting ever on the Human Genome Project, and of course, that came into being and was successful. And from my point of view, its major accomplishment was it gave us a complete parts list of all genes, and that meant for the first time we could think about doing systems biology on humans. And finally, later in my career, I had the opportunity to start the very first Institute of Systems Biology and to create, at least initiate, systems science and its application to disease. And of course, that application is systems medicine. And it has 2 features that are absolutely central to personalized medicine. One is that each of you as patients will, in the near future, be surrounded by a virtual data cloud of billions of data points of many, many different types. And this data cloud will be dynamic. That is, you will add to your data cloud every 3 months or 6 months so that you can capture not only the genetics, but the changes in your environment as well. And of course, the second thing that came out of systems medicine was the idea that biological networks mediate information. They direct our development, our physiologic responses, our aging. But when perturbed, they cause disease. And if we can capture the nature of those differences, we have deep insights into mechanisms, new diagnostics, and new therapeutics. Well, it turned out about 3 or 4 years ago, there was a convergence of systems medicine on the one hand, with big data on the other hand, with patient-activated social networks on the third hand, that led to a medicine which we call predictive, preventive, personalized, and participatory. And the first 3 Ps are self-evident. The 4th P, the essence of it, is that the patient will be at the very center of their own health care. P4 medicine differs from contemporary medicine in it's proactive, it's focused on the individual, it has a major focus on wellness, it creates these dynamic data clouds, and it's very skeptical of how we do clinical trials today, taking 20,000 patients and averaging them to get results when each patient is unique genetically and unique environmentally. And P4 medicine analyzes them as unique individuals and aggregates according to interesting properties. And of course, the patient, the consumer-activated social networks are about how we teach patients about this new personalized medicine. It's doing crowdsourcing, so the patients themselves will help physicians learn to take care of themselves better. And they're advocates for pushing on a very conservative healthcare system, the kind of change I'm talking about. So this P4 personalized medicine is really just about two things. One, it's about quantifying wellness. The second, it's about demystifying disease. Society puts 98% of its resources into the disease side of that equation. And as a result, we have a lot of catching up to do scientifically on the wellness side of the equation. I would argue that there will begin to emerge from this point in time a separate new industry called the wellness industry, and I'd argue in a period of 10 years, it may well exceed in market cap the disease industry or the current healthcare industry. And let me just say, wellness is critical in two regards to this whole new vision of healthcare. One, wellness will allow each of us to optimize our own well-being and most efficiently use both our physical and mental capacities. And number two, the only way we can really understand disease is if we follow it from wellness to disease and get the earliest transition, figure out how to ameliorate it, and put the patient back immediately on the wellness trajectory, saving society all of the downstream costs. So to push this whole idea forward, we started a project about a year ago with 107 individuals. We created the dynamic data clouds. We were able to analyze and model the data clouds for each individual to identify actionable possibilities that allowed them to optimize their wellness and or avoid disease. And in fact, we've just recently finished up the analyses of these data, and they're really spectacular beyond belief. We haven't got time to go into the details here, but I will tell you what has happened is really quite remarkable. We have now a large catalog of actionable possibilities that'll be useful for pushing this vision forward. We have a database, both of well individuals and of individuals who've transitioned into disease, that give us fundamental new insights for creating the companies that will be the foundation entities of this new wellness trajectory. Some of them could be the Googles and or the Microsofts of this entirely new industry. And a third thing that's beginning to happen is the cost of these tests will start to follow a Moore's law of decline, an exponential decline, bringing the cost down to the place that for the first time we can think about globalizing this type of healthcare, not only for developed worlds, but for developing worlds as well. And my vision for this new kind of P4 medicine is that we'll see a democratization of healthcare that was inconceivable even a short period of time ago.
I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you, Leroy. Thank you. We can. Thank you. And yes, and keep the microphone near to Leroy, because you will maybe react to what Samir Brahmachari will talk to you. And please welcome now Samir. Samir Brahmachari, you can, yes, you have the computer. Please welcome Samir. Please, come here. Samir Brahmachari, you are a scientist and founder director of the Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology. Huh? You are Indian, and you managed to make a map of genomic in India, and maybe you want to talk about that, right?
Yes.
And you have a slide, okay?
With the experience of mapping the Indian genome variation 55 population and then initiating genome sequencing of 95 years plus old people as well-being genomics. Because these people being able to live through, when the life expectancy was 30, 35, how did they live 95 years? When the Western world had already 60 years of life expectancy. And lastly, to crowdsource, to map mycobacterium genome to create an open source platform. So I am like to take the advantage of this question mark, a benefit and access for all. So if you look at the slide, I said the benefit and access for all will only be possible. It is available, but it will be affordable. Availability needs strong IP, increases availability, whereas strong IP decreases affordability. So discovery to be cheaper need to be open innovation and shared wisdom. The example I give, left side, the genome sequencing has decreased from $300 million to $1,000. When it was $300 million, it was available but not accessible. Whereas the drug discovery has gone from $1 million to $1 billion. And therefore, we need to look at it and make sure there's a difference. The way it will be to make, I say, P5 medicine, because I said we will also get into precision medicine. That's what Obama has announced. And you can see we need to crowdsource. And the example I give you by open source drug discovery on tuberculosis. We need to use drugs for substrate for population specific to avoid adverse drug reaction, which are already FDA approved drugs. And I have already shown there are examples of metformin, auranofin for diabetes, for arthritis are being worked out. You also have a participatory and crowdsourced patient wisdom for epidemiology. Indian Ayurveda is a great example. It's 4,000 years old. It was all crowdsourced knowledge base and wisdom. The traditional base, including the Chinese medicine, and participatory clinical trial for modern medicine. Wellness initiative, as I'm sure Lee mentioned, big data analytics, sequencing of centenarians, Fitbit, which most of us carry, and devices, and I'm sure IBM Watson Health. And next session, I'm sure IBM will talk about it. I don't want to take this out. I just want to take you a medicine system which is holistic, participatory, however, was not precision. It was preventive and predictive and followed all the principles. So as a Director General, I supported the largest Indian system of looking at this, how to merge genomics with, it has also had the predictive power, it has a preventive power, and very large portions of people, and is also now affordable. So the question is, this is the future. How do we learn from our wisdom and get back? And today we have a TKDL, Traditional Knowledge Digital Library, of 34 million pages of documented text of Sanskrit in 5 languages for all IPOs to look into it. So that this is a knowledge, open source, available. How do we use this knowledge to create accessible and affordable to benefit for all?
You have an answer for that?
So that's what I said, that this is the solution. We need 3 principles. We need to go to open source. Knowledge of human genome sequencing was open. Linux was open. And that's why we have come where we are. We need to have this sort of knowledge base of wisdom, crowdsourced wisdom. So when patients participate, we can reduce the clinical trial cost. And that is how we should be able to reduce cost and make it affordable.
Is the Indian model, is it transferable to other countries, and how can this be achieved?
Must remember, half the world population, China and India, practiced old traditional medicine for several thousand years. So how do we use this wisdom to create personal medicine? Remember, every Ayurvedic preparation is personalized. Today I'm looking at about 6 million patient data record and who are practicing Ayurvedic medicine. An average cost is about €20 per person per month, which is affordable. And there is a huge data. So big data analytics with all our personal data information, because I believe the future lies in finally the food and lifestyle will decide our future. The only way we can make entire thing affordable if we can come back and understand how is our metabolism inside, how do we change the food, how do we adjust and personalize food. Actually, if you look at, all of us have personalized food. We decide this eating, my bowel movement is okay, this eating, my blood pressure goes up, this eating, my blood sugar goes down. So therefore, tomorrow's medicine is not going to be a chemical entity. Tomorrow's medicine will be within the ecosystem. Because remember, all plants and medicinal plants and all within the ecosystem. And therefore, the future, I believe, is to come up with more plant-based medicines. The drugs are not going to be single-point targets. It has to be multi-target, so they'll be pathway-based. So therefore, already we know we have a combination therapy required. So the whole change scenario has changed. And that was exactly the principles of holistic medicine, as Lee mentioned about system medicine. So one way is looking at system-level understanding. Understanding human at a system level will take, I don't know how many years, 30 years maybe, by the time I won't be here. But today, system level, we can understand bacteria, informations.
But the key to develop it, what is it?
See, the develop is that how do we mine the literature? And that's why I said Watson will help many, many things, IBM Watson. But I believe what we have done, we got 27,000 published papers read by students and to annotate the mycobacterium genome and build up a complete system-level understanding. From there to identify targets. And from that target's identification, we could see that existing FDA-approved drugs can help to reposition some of the possibility. So these are the new ways one has to look at, and I think the future lies there. So last point I want to just mention that if we want accessibility to all, which I think the philosophy of France, because otherwise Pasteur would not have been here. And also John Dosset from this part of the world gave the world first data free. With his personal money, that was developed. You know, when I just became member of Hugo in 1990, I met him in 92, and I was delighted. CIMI-Paris, right? How is it that we cannot make knowledge and wisdom shareable? If we can, I'm sure my pharma guys will kill me after my sentence, but I'm saying it is not counterproductive. By making close, we have only increased the cost of development. By making it participatory, in a large scale, will eventually benefit people. And the cost will come down. And when more people use, just like cell phone, today 800 million Indians use cell phone. By making the price down, actual profit has gone up. So we have to learn something from Facebook, social media, and see how to make profit while giving it free, as you are tweeting in this meeting.
Yes.
Nobody is paying to tweet.
So, yes, that's right. We can have some tweet reaction of what you're saying, Samir. But maybe Leroy Hood has a reaction about the cost that Samir Brahmachari is saying.
Well, I did make the point that I think there are several reasons that this new type of personalized medicine, and let me say, it is a new type of personalized medicine. It isn't what doctors have ever done before, and it's not traditional Chinese medicine. This is getting a detailed picture of what you are, and from that, extracting how we can optimize your performance as a human being. So I'd say that that's fundamentally different. So where are the costs going to come from? This is going to push the digitization of medicine in a way we've never seen before, and that means the cost of assays, which are the major cost of this approach, are going to come down dramatically. My guess is in 5 to 8 years, the cost of a genome won't be $1,200 or $1,300, which it is today, it'll be 100 or less. It'll be a common, ordinary assay. And that'll be true of all the other assays as well. So in a relatively short period of time, cost isn't going to be the big issue facing bringing this kind of vision to the developing world. Rather, it's going to be execution. I would say a second place that we're going to save enormous money is, suppose that we follow all of you and can immediately identify transitions to whatever disease you're predisposed to first. And suppose we can flip it back immediately. Again, you save all of that downstream cost in being sick, often chronically for the rest of your life, if we can do that. And we have the approaches to be able to do this kind of thing. And I think the third thing that's really key is the world globally loses $1 trillion or more a year due to absenteeism and sickness and things like that. I think that can be fundamentally changed in major ways, creating enormous new resources that can be used in lots of different ways. So I just want to make the point that the personalized medicine I'm talking about isn't what doctors did before. It isn't what the Chinese and Indians did before. It is assessing the very essence of what you are and using that to optimize wellness, avoid disease for you.
So a multidisciplinary approach, yes.
I agree with you in some sense, Lee, but I just wanted to tell all this knowledge in Ayurveda is all digitized now. It was all in Sanskrit 150 years. Everything that we are talking about, personalized medicine, being a genomic scientist, I'm amazed when I read those translations now with my colleagues who are expert in Sanskrit, that every one of them, they were thought of. I couldn't believe it, that they were doing such large crowdsourcing, so great analytics. How could they? Only differences, as I said, they had a probabilistic predictive power. Today, whether you'll have a breast cancer or not on the basis of gene is a probability predictive power. They had a preventive therapy integrated with what you call cleansing, panchakarma. I was surprised to see that it all talked about removing certain parts of the negative elements from the body. Today we talk about microbiome. We say we need to change the microbiome of the stomach. So that's sitting in the gut. So you need to clean and reposition. So what I meant is this knowledge was hidden. 154,000 years knowledge practiced by only people who can read those obscure language. Today, my organization, CSIR, has digitized this at 34 million pages in 5 languages. And access has been given to Intellectual Property Office as a prior art. And you will be surprised. 300 patent applications coming from various companies gets knocked off because of this. Because actually, huge amount of knowledge exists. And that knowledge is presently, with all chemical reactions and assays and blah, 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 we are able to achieve the same information. So my argument is, why we have a barrier? Why not your personal well-being, as you said very correctly? It is not going to increase the price if we can reduce the clinical trial cost by doing better discovery. So we have to make better discovery for the knowledge base. We have to reduce clinical trial and epidemiological costs by crowdsourcing. So therefore, we should, in principle, personalized medicine could reach. But I still remind you, HIV drug, when it was $10,000, $12,000 per patient, it did not reach Africa. Until Indian generic companies, Cipla, Hamid, and the scientists of CSIR, they brought the cost down to $80. Today, every African, sub-Saharan African, or parts of poor India could afford that medicine. So therefore, affordability is a key issue. How do we make affordability? Then only access comes. I do not agree the genome sequencing will go down, because my argument is the cost of genome sequencing is not the chemical. Cost of drug is not the chemical. the draw cost is the analysis. And the analysis will need manpower with supercomputers, lots of information. And just like PC price doesn't go down below $1,000, just stick. They will give more features, more interpretation, better analysis, but price will stick around that region, which is the way world has decided. However, diagnostics can be done up to $100. It will not go below a scan because you send somebody for scan, and the market for the scanning will go if you make genome sequencing too cheap. So therefore, I believe this is where it's stuck. But however, it needs certain innovations. Genome cost has come down because government put money. I believe for infectious disease, neglected disease, where pharma is not taking forward, it is important that we have a foundation approach. I'm sure Honorable Mayor, Honorable Chairman, and I'm very glad that this is my second time I have come to BIOVISION. I believe this is the future. We need to have an open source initiative for diseases for which there's not much profit or the people are poor, rather than depending on the farmer.
Samir Brahmachari, thank you. You gave me the perfect transition to welcome Brigitte Autran here, who's a specialist of HIV. We can applaud Mr. Samir Brahmachari. And you won't be alone, Brigitte, because I also please welcome Mona Nemer. Thank you. No, they have no slide, so you just give the microphone. Thank you. Brigitte Autran, venez. Alors, je présente Brigitte. You want to do in English and French, peut-être en français? Non, comme vous voulez. Et comme vous voulez, voilà, peut-être en français alors. Donc Brigitte.
We're in Canada, we're bilingual.
Are you bilingual in Canada? So you want to do it in English? I have no problem. Comme vous voulez. Peut-être en anglais? Okay. So I want you to discuss, both of you, because you are specialized in, and you are fighting for vaccine, and you are specialized in HIV infections. And you, Mona, you're also working on infections and disease, and also working in the new programs that I want you to answer and to make an answer to Brigitte. Let's start with you, Brigitte. You're working, I think, in a One Health program. Maybe we should talk about that.
Okay, thank you. So I'm first speaking about vaccines. So vaccines are not, or not yet, a P4 medicine. They are probably the first P1, P2, P3 medicines. It is capable to prevent, of course. It is also capable to predict the prevention and the protection against infectious disease. And it is a participatory medicine because it requires the participation, not of the patient, but of the family, of the healthy individual. And this participation of the healthy individual is a key issue in terms of vaccines, as everybody knows, in our countries, in our developed countries where the society is so afraid about vaccines. We need the participation of the society to help us to fight against these infectious diseases which are causing the major threats in terms of global health. So it is not yet a P4 medicine, and I will be glad to discuss with LEROY and with Mr. Brahmachari whether it can become a P4 medicine and a personalized medicine. But before being a personalized medicine, we have to recognize that vaccines have been so tremendously efficacious in preventing infectious diseases in the context of global health. It has been capable to prevent major disease. We were close to eradicate poliovirus. Unfortunately, it has not yet been eradicated, and it's very important in front of Alain Mérieux to recognize the importance of his father in the fight against poliomyelitis. Vaccines are not yet capable to eradicate measles because, as for poliovirus, the society is fighting against this mass vaccination. So we need the P of the participation for getting the P3 medicine for the vaccines.
But Brigitte, vaccines are very important and infectious diseases are very important, and how else can we say that they're not important in front of Monsieur Mérieux? But you know, most of the people who die in the world actually die of cardiovascular diseases. And in fact, some of your infectious agents are now causing them to die of heart attacks. So if I take HIV patients now, 40% of them are dying of heart attack. Most of them suffer from hypertension. And by the way, it's very nice to talk about P4 and P5, but we're assuming that we know the causes and the genetic defects for diseases. In the case of hypertension, which probably affects a good number of the audience here, we still don't know the genetic basis of hypertension and who will develop it and who will not. So we have to be careful about continuous paying attention to things other than just vaccines and infections.
Of course, but nevertheless, perhaps we'll have one day a vaccine against hypertension or a vaccine against diabetes, although I'm not believing that.
Yeah, how do you know who you're going to have to vaccinate?
So this is a question, absolutely. And we have to, if we have to move forward and reach the status of P4 medicine for vaccines, we have to develop the tools to get personalized vaccines. And vaccines have been tremendously efficacious because of their low price, because of their terrific affordability for the societies. And I agree that it would be fantastic to be capable to adapt a vaccine to everybody, particularly to prevent any side effect, whatever the side effect. But it would be very interesting in the end of this session to discuss whether predictive medicine can be so affordable that it would not impact the price of the vaccine and would not impact our capacity to have broad vaccine coverage. So I'm perfectly agreeing, and I hope this BIOVISION meeting will help to move forward personalized vaccines and the development of personalized tools to predict, for example, side effects. However, we have to maintain the affordability of this fantastic public health policy.
Affordability is critical, but to have markers and to know who you're going to vaccinate, because this is what's going to bring down the cost for the healthcare system, you need to understand the gene. And I think that we're here talking about P4 and P5, and we don't have yet a proper fingerprinting of all the disease genes that most of humanity suffer from. Take the case of Africa. We think they have infections, they have dengue, they have rheumatoid fever. Well, that causes them to have heart valve defects, which is a huge cost for their system, which is already quite strained. So we still don't understand who's going to develop valve disease, rheumatoid or non-rheumatoid fever valve disease, and what are we going to do about it? Which genes are important? So in order to understand this, we have to go back to our basic research and understand what are the genes and the factors in the environment that affect the development of all the organs, the heart, the pancreas, the brain, because these are the ones that are going to be predictive for disease.
I agree. Genes are very important to detect also immune responses to vaccines. And not only genes are important, and I think in the context of personalized medicines, vaccines have also to evolve toward less mass vaccination, but more niche vaccination. And it's not exactly personalized medicine, but of course, vaccines have to be developed to be more efficacious in immune-suppressed individuals, to be more well-tolerated in these immune-suppressed individuals. They have also to be well-tolerated in pregnant women. They have to be well-tolerated and very efficacious in the elderly, etc., etc. This is not exactly the dimension of the so-called personalized medicine, but it's to some degree, it is a kind of precision medicine at the level of subpopulation or niche population. And I do think that these challenge is a very challenging issue for vaccine development. And again, I'm pretty sure that here in Lyon, with all the community working in basic research, in translational medicine, etc., and in the industry, we are in the good place to reach these challenges.
Well, at the end of the day, we still have to look at the patients, and we have to look at them before they are patients, at the individuals. So I'm certain at the end of the day, nurses, clinicians, other healthcare workers are going to have to interact with the individuals. And how do we train now in the modern way and with all this information? How are we training our healthcare workers?
This is an issue. And we have not only to train our healthcare workers, we have also to train and to inform the population, to the general population, to get the P of the participatory medicine. So it's very important. And again, last year, the BIOVISION had organized a forum to inform the lay people and the general population on vaccines. I know that there is another grand public forum this year. And I think this capacity of a forum like BIOVISION to go closer to the society is extremely important, and we know it is very important, again, in the context of vaccine.
So you're talking about a large public science and health literacy,
yeah?
Which is something that I think has been alluded to. So how do you go about proper information as opposed to misinformation, which is available on the open source in Google and everywhere else? So isn't that another challenge?
Yeah, it is, definitely. So although I fully agree that we know we need absolutely non-proprietary informations, we need also to be capable to control the validity of the informations which are on the net, and this is another challenge.
Are you talking about policing the net now, Brigitte?
What do you propose about that, Mona?
I'm not at all a political
woman.
woman.
Control the internet and the...
No, I think this is where NGOs and foundations have a critical role to play to provide a proper space with verified information for the large public. And some places have started to do this. Unfortunately, they're usually attached to a hospital, for example, in the United States or otherwise.
Mona, can you also, sorry to come back to this issue, but give us maybe a way to train the medicine about the training that you were talking about?
Well, I think that we need to think carefully about how we're training our physicians. In many places, we're still training them the way we trained them 20 or 30 years ago. And even the antibiotics and the vaccines that we're using today are not the same. So it's very important to maintain them through some sort of training modules, inform them of the latest developments in technologies, the data mining, all these aspects. It's basically phenotyping the patients in a different manner.
If I can add something about the information of the public and the general population, I do agree that we have to reinforce our capacity of educate the physicians and the nurses, particularly for vaccines. I do think, and I'm glad to say that in front of Mr. Meyer, that we should introduce better education on health and better education of prevention at school. It's the same area, it's the same importance as sexual prevention, and I do think that, at least in our country, we should move forward introducing a very solid, very well controlled, very scientific information at the kid level.
In fact, it's not just at school. We have, with all due respect to engineers who would be in the audience, we train professionals at the level of universities, and they're not health literate. So the first time they go to see the clinician, and that's going to be something very important for personalized medicine, if you're going to make a decision, well, you have to understand the options. In many cases, people are not even literate enough to understand the options.
We have to train them.
It's all about training. Maybe we have a reaction in the audience? No, somebody? Yes, Samir Brahmachari. We don't have a microphone? No? Okay.
I just thought that I will support BRIGITTE. There is a clear, billion people. When we mapped the risk to malaria, it turns out are 200 million people, and we could actually map the death occurrences, density on India, and it matched. So therefore, it gives an idea. You can now vaccinate only 200 million instead of 1 billion plus. So that's point one. Number two, I think the curation in this big data space will be done by the patient themselves. So therefore, where the information, every information there, we a new wiki, which patients will control and say, this is where I'm right, wrong, but no, I get a headache under this medicine, I don't. So therefore, expect a new world. But the computer that will be required to analyze those unstructured data is what we are hoping IBM Health will, IBM Watson Health will do. Because biggest challenge is analyzing structured and unstructured data simultaneously to arrive into a medical, be valid, as you said, my personal life. I want to take a right decision, I don't want to take a wrong decision. So that's the challenge. Can we get there?
But if you need the IBM Watson computer for this, how are we going to have this accessible and affordable?
So therefore, you will be interesting, as I said, all this will be available, not because you are paying for it, somebody will pay for it. So just like internet is free available in some sense, same way it will be available. And I have a big hope that, I'm a big champion because infectious disease, today, 1,000 Indians will die in tuberculosis, 4,000 of the world. So we haven't been able to, vaccination is the only choice. If we can come up with the right vaccine, that's the challenge.
So do you and LEROY believe that we will reach a point-of-care genomics?
LEROY, maybe you want to...
It's a matter of time.
Absolutely. I think it's a matter of time. I think in 10 years, we'll have a smart a cell phone that can measure a drop of your blood and make many of the measurements that we need now. We have to figure out how to do some of the more complicated measurements, and even for automated DNA sequencing, there are miniature devices that are probably going to enable this. So, look, I think the technology isn't going to be in the slightest limiting. I think you can let your imaginations range free.
We will talk about the costs, sorry, in the next, now with the industrial leaders. So thank you.
So personalized medicine, converges actually with global, but we still have a long ways to go.
Thank you, Morana. Thank you, Brigitte. Thank you. And please welcome the three industrial leaders that we are going to talk here in the talk corner, who are Olivier Charmeil, Adrian Thomas, and Roberto Gradnik. Thank you. Voilà. You have your microphone here. Oh. Maybe you should take it off now. Have a seat, please, yes. So you heard what we were talking about with Brigitte Autran and Morana. Maybe you have a reaction about this discussion, and also the point of LEROY Hood and Samir Brahmachari.
So maybe I start. Lee, I think you have been very clear in saying that the world of medicine is going to change in the next 10 to 15 years. Huh? It's clear that there is a lot of science out there. The science is there. The science is everywhere. But it's obvious, and things have changed in the last 10 or 15 years, when you remember that R&D people would work, very far from cities, in the woods, so that they wouldn't be influenced and that they could be really well focused. Now we see that we have to work all together. It's not anymore about confrontation, it's going to be about collaboration. It's about being able to develop all together, system biology, system medicine. We'll have to work with the regulator. We didn't talk so much about regulators, because we will have to work together, all together, in order to bring to the patients the new medicines.
Yes, Olivier Sarmel, you are the CEO of Sanofi. I didn't mention it. Maybe Adrian Thomas from Johnson & Johnson. Maybe you have an opinion on that, on what's said.
Yeah, you know, I think there was very little that was said that most people could argue with because it was kind of self-evident. But in Australia, we like to kick the tires and look underneath the hood sometimes. And as I look at the promise of personalised medicine, you know, I think, or even access, I think we have to acknowledge that it's not necessarily about biological systems or technology. These issues are cultural, they're economic, and they're very much political in nature. And I struggle a little bit with the answer to healthcare is to have a good diet and the microbiome when we know that patients with chronic lymphocytic leukemia who have a Bruton's tyrosine kinase deficiency and we treat that are cured. So I think we tend to use very, very overarching and global statements, but I think as you think about access in healthcare, it's a balance, and it's a balance of the choices that are directed at the population versus at the individual. And I don't think that we can get beyond that. We can stratify down the population to subpopulations and niche populations, but I think the approach that we take in the end-of-life efficiency and oncology and advanced diseases is very different than it is in primary prevention, vaccination, diet, exercise, and being good people. So I think we have to look at that. I also think it's a little bit misleading to talk about, you know, if no one does something, everyone will do it. The question of investment in healthcare for all the companies who are here and are wondering, you know, what's their ability to develop a product or a service and commercialize that. Someone pays for the risk, and most people fail. And the notion that you know you can produce a product for $80, which is entirely true, is not the same as you can develop a product for $80. If I look at the HIV example, what happened there is the world said, rich countries and companies have to pay for the poor, and they should, and I think we all agree with that. It's about basic human nature, but at the end of the day, if we take that approach everywhere, there will be no investment in R&D. So it's a balance, and somehow we have to figure out the business model, but it's not as simple as, it's not as simplistic as sometimes people say.
Roberto Gradnik.
Yeah, if I may comment, I mean, I'm here representing companies that do cell therapy, gene therapy, sequencing of genes, and I should answer that, of course, I fully agree that technology will not be an obstacle and that personalized medicine is here and will be the reality. But let me a little bit go outside of my role and think of the title of this session, which is customized approach for global health. And global health meaning, of course, more health or actually wellness for most people. And by the way, talking also what we discussed today in our assembly, we shouldn't think that market access of new technology is only a problem of developing countries. It is a problem in the United States and in Europe and in very developed countries. I don't know about Australia, but probably maybe. And this is why I like customized in the title, because I think that we should more and more think when we talk about cooperations, about developing new approaches, of really customized, which means, yes, personalized, go into the gene codes, of course, stratifying by groups and then really go into personalized medicine. This is what our companies try to do. But also customized to the system of health. I think we all know, but we heard Alain Mérieux talking of 1,400 causes of cholera every day. They are not waiting for gene therapy, honestly. I mean, they might in some years. So we need to have an approach of customized to system of health, customized to geography. Diseases are geographical and health systems are geographic. So I would really urge also to consider customized therapy as the frontier where convergence of technologies, IT clearly is going to help a lot here. So when we talk about innovation in this field, and this is what some of our companies are doing, really, for example, rethinking also use of all drugs with the new technologies can really bring big benefits and be more sustainable maybe than other approaches. So this was the reaction I had, but
this has a cost, right?
This has a cost, absolutely. I agree with you. This is why we need to go the cooperation way, as was mentioned. Yes, R&D is not anymore an ivory tower, fortunately, and this is very welcome. And this is where, for example, in Europe, because we are a European association, not always the political parties and political stakeholders and the regulators are really up to speed to help this customized approach and, for example, customize the regulatory approval path or the market access, which we can talk for hours about
yeah.
In Europe or elsewhere, which is really, is not a technology obstacle. The obstacle is definitely cost, but cost is driven also by the approach, which is sometimes too rigid from many stakeholders.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a very important point because the technology is moving very fast. And I think we need all together to do a better job, probably talking much more upstream. And I get back to the discussion with the regulators. You know, the more we are connected upstream with the regulators, the more we will be in a position to bring to the patient the new medicines. Today, we all know we are in Europe, and I think we need to be very proud of what we have achieved together. We have developed this centralized procedure. It makes the licensing or the registration process much faster. But on the other hand, if I take the example of vaccines, and I'm looking to the various countries of Europe, I realize that between the market authorization and the issuance of guidelines, depending on the countries, there might be 5 to 6 years. So we need to be much more connected and work as a community.
Do you know, I think one thing we haven't talked enough about is the patient centricity. So we've talked about the technology and the regulatory and reimbursement hurdles a little bit. But one of the interesting things is, as we think about access, really understanding that 2/3 of the world's population actually lives in self-pay. There's no government paying for their healthcare. They have to make choices themselves. And something that's very interesting, particularly in the biologics space, is there used to be a little bit of an urban legend that said that people who lived in Southeast Asia don't use biologics. And I said, why? Well, because it's cultural. Actually, it's not cultural, it's economic. Because from a patient perspective, they don't really care about response rates of 40% in a population. What they care about is, what's my cost to first benefit? What's my time to first benefit? How will I recognize that benefit and how will I afford it? And I think that we need to understand a lot more about the behavioral economics at the patient level as we think about broadening access.
Do you agree, Roberto?
No, absolutely. I absolutely agree. And the perception of the benefit goes also through what I was saying before, through the system, how the intervention is actually delivered. Because just to give you an example, if you have a very effective drug, but then it's not delivered to the right person or in the right way, or the compliance is not good, then the perception of the patient is that the benefit is not there, then the willingness to pay goes away. I absolutely agree with you. But it's again the whole system that needs to be adapted.
Yeah, if I get back to vaccines, it's obvious that what we are trying to do with vaccination and the various stakeholders is to have impact on individuals through communities. And we need to make sure that we design a system that allow, of course, large campaign of immunization to take place, which means that vaccines need to be available. I'm just back from heavy traveling in Asia, where it's obvious that today there is not the infrastructure, the clinics do not exist as such to go for large immunization campaigns. So how can we develop all together a system that would allow a broad immunization program?
What could be the solution for that?
I think it's a mix, as usual. It's multifaceted. It's working with the ministries of health and making sure that large immunization programs are put in place. It's also making sure that in certain countries where it's important that vaccines reach really rural areas, that we put in place the right system so that the vaccines product can reach each and every rural areas, and we know that logistics is, of course, a big issue. It's also meaning making sure that if I get back, Gérard Collomb mentioned about dengue. For us, what we have decided to do is to go for dengue vaccination in endemic countries, in the areas where people suffer and die of dengue. So a well-targeted approach that will allow to have significant impact in terms of public health.
You know, I think I want to come back to something that you raised before, which is the need to work in partnerships. And we have a program in the company on Ebola, and what's amazing to me about Ebola is not necessarily the fact that it's a health security risk, it's the fact that for a relatively small mortality, the entire international community was able to come together and figure out financing flexibility, regulatory flexibility, how to partner on clinical trials and delivery, vast programs to advance local point-of-care diagnostics, all happened around that. And if we really want to address access and affordability, or science and access, that's the way we have to think, in a totally different business model. And it means co-investing in the risk, as well as co-investing in actually the development and delivery.
Maybe you have a reaction, Samir, Brahmachari. I'm going to give you a microphone. Yes, please.
I completely agree with him that we need a complete paradigm shift in business model. All I can say, I won't well tell you the cost. Open source drug discovery of tuberculosis of India, where 8,000 people put their brain, which has allowed us to pull up the whole pipeline, including TB Alliance. We have gone ahead with the 3-drug MDR clinical trial. I don't want to tell the cost, but all I can tell, the WHO has spent more money in understanding and asking one of my friends in the United States to do a study, how open source business model. All I can tell, it is incredibly low cost. I cannot tell if I tell the cost, you know, he asked me, don't tell the cost publicly. It is incredibly low. So if we can get crowdsourced knowledge, volunteers, patient contribution, data coming and participation from millions of students, but still, Sanofi Aventis can give a low-cost drug because our Santa Biotech made the cost low, which was acquired. So it's very important that at the end, we have to make the cost low, only to make it available.
And I fully agree with you, but as you know, it was actually Janssen, the pharma side of Johnson & Johnson, that developed the first new MDR TB drug in 40 years. And
Absolutely.
It was 200 million just to get to a phase 2 trial. Just to get to phase 2. 15 years of more research.
I'm only telling you.
So I'm fully on board with you, but I think
we need a business model difference. So as I said, who said that the way clinical trial is happening today is the best way? Today, if I come up with a drug which is equal efficiency, but 1/10 the price, I can do it, I won't be allowed. So we don't have Glivax. If we have Glivax, then 58 people clinical trial is good enough for phase 3. Look at the list of clinical trial. Why? Because phase 1, phase 2, we are making poor discovery. If our discovery is better, cost and discovery should come through massive computing with brilliant minds putting into it. It will not come through business model unless we come out the way. So if you really have that heart to think HIV, infectious disease, Ebola, problems of the world is solved, then we need a complete different business model.
So 2 or 3 comments from my side.
Yes,
it's obvious that today developing a vaccine candidate or developing a new medicine, as you know, it is extremely costly. I've been in this industry for 20 years, and of course, I've experienced more failures than success. And we know that the costs have been rising for various reasons in the last 20 to 25 years. Where I take what you say is that we are moving more and more into biologics. And it's clear that today we have a system that has been designed 40 or 50 years ago that will probably need to be adapted at some point in order to be more efficient. We know that the world is getting more and more fragmented also. You have the EMA, the FDA, you have, of course, all the other agencies, which means that it's a burden for the whole system. There are high transaction costs because, of course, when you want to register a new product in a country, if you go to the next country, you need the dossier under a little bit different format, and you see a lot of source of inefficiencies. So again, here, I think there are some value for us to get better aligned in order for the whole healthcare system to be more productive. Last point, yes, I think all companies today, because let's be honest, we didn't do a good job in the last 10 to 15 years. There's been huge innovation. What is important so that we are effective is that we are very selective in what goes out of discovery, so that we can bet, on medicines that at the end of the day are going to bring added value to the patient with a high probability of success. Because there is nothing worse for everyone than to allocate significant resources on projects that at some point are going to fail.
Maybe Brigitte Autran wants to react about the vaccines, which you are fighting for.
I fully agree with. I will fully agree with what you've said about vaccines, but what would you say about HIV vaccines? HIV vaccines have been a failure for 25 years. Would you mind that we should not have started developing HIV vaccines because we knew from scratch that we would be reaching failure? So it is a cost for the society, it is a cost for the pharmaceutical company, but we have to share the cost and we have to move forward because we need vaccines.
No, I totally support, and HIV is a very good example. HIV, given its complexity, and we are on our side now part of a program, as you know, is not at the scale of one entity. We need to join forces. And the more we can do it from the upstream part, the better it is. So as a community, could we move faster on HIV? Probably. And I think there are experience, and we have been talking about Ebola. I was very interested to see that, yes, we have been talking together much earlier in the process.
Okay, maybe you want to add something because we have to close the session. Okay, so I'm going to thank you. Thank you, Adrienne Thomas. Thank you, Olivier Charmeil, and thank you, Roberto Gradnik. Thank you to all speakers. And I let you enjoy the rest of our BioVision.